wanna see your face. I wanna know your heart. I wanna walk with you every day of my life, God.
Good morning. Welcome to Devos with Debbie. Again, I always start these videos without little perfect boxed up thoughts and stuff, so you'll just get me externally processing a little. But in this reading that I had this morning, I was looking at Balaam and his later oracles in Numbers. It's really interesting. He says, God is not man that he should lie, or son of man that he should change his mind. He has said, and will he not do it? Or he has spoken, and will he not fulfill it? And this really struck me, like, God is not man that he should lie, or like man that he should change his mind or fall back on his word. And this is so interesting. Like, how often do we box up God and how we think he is? Even in, even using like scripture, say like God is love, and God is, and God is. And we just, box him up, even with great, like, true definitions of who God is. And then we like set it aside. And yet we're still thinking of him in our human, like, man mindset. And so just that one phrase, like, God is not man, blows my mind a little, thinking like, okay, God is so much bigger than I can ever comprehend. But then also, God is not man. Like, how many times have I had men or women, like, let me down? Like, old or young, doesn't matter. Like, man, humankind thinks sometimes, often, and yet God stands in stark contrast to that. He's separating himself. God is not man. He is faithful to his word. What he starts, he finishes. What he says, he does. He does not lie. That is like such an encouraging word to me. And also like opens my mind to who God is. So that's just a small thought on Numbers 23 and 24. But jumping up to 1 Corinthians, some other thoughts are like not super related. It's not perfectly boxed up here, but Paul's talking again to the church in Corinth, and he says, this is how one should regard us, as servants of Christ, stewards of the mysteries of God. Moreover, it is required of stewards that they should be found faithful. And it's just so interesting. Like, Paul, before he became a Christian, had status, Roman citizen, like, basically power and authority as he, ordered people around and witnessed, and facilitated the arrest of Christians. And all of a sudden, he meets Christ, his whole life is changed, and his status is revoked. If anyone can say, like, talk about status being revoked and living, like, homeless and dependent on others and mobile and being imprisoned and stoned, like, Paul has authority to speak on this. And when he identifies as a servant of Christ, like, we pay attention because he knows what it means to be a servant of Christ. Yeah, and And even that, like, status is fitting with when, Jesus says, I have come not to be served, but to serve. And how often my mindset defaults to, well, I deserve that. I deserve the credit. I deserve the praise. I deserve to be served. And that mindset isn't going to get you very far. Even like, oh wow, I'm wearing my Virginia shirt. That is funny. But even like thinking about, I went to school, I went to University of Virginia, and yet part of my job is mopping the floor and scrubbing the toilets. And if I ever have the thought, like, I'm above this, I have a college degree, I just need to slap myself because my my life is not about me being amazing. It's about serving others in whatever capacity that is. And Jesus washed the feet of his disciples. You know, he washed the feet of his disciples. We are not above anything as believers. We have come to be servants to others, but also servants to Christ. And that means when Jesus says go, you go. When Jesus says serve, you serve. He is our master. He is the one, God is the one who tells us what to do. And that sounds sort of mean and intense, but like, if you again put it into perspective, God is not man. Woo, connection. God's not man. Like, he is above us. He has knowledge beyond us. And even that, he is not man that he will make things and manipulate things. God is God. He is perfect. He is loving. He is just. And his plans and his commands are for us to flourish and for him to be glorified. So that's just mini thought. But also, like, he says, stewards of the mysteries of God. Moreover, it is required of stewards that they be found faithful. Like, gosh, I want to be found faithful. And I know I haven't been. In pretty much every area of my life, I have failed. I have fallen. I've fallen short. Yeah, I'm not faithful. Even like, I go through seasons of faithfulness and seasons of like being like Hosea's wife. In scripture, there's this, I don't know if you know about this, there's this analogy that God gives a prophet that's very personal to his life, where Hosea marries a prostitute. And basically God says, and she like keeps on like going off, and he's like, go back and get her, bring her back home. And God's like, this is what it's like to be me. I have this bride, this people that I love, that I have poured into, that I cherish, and yet they go off and go to other gods and throw themselves into a life of sin again. But I will continually go back and pay the debts, purchase back my wife, and bring her back home. And that heart of God is something that's so beautiful. And I often am not faithful. And the amount of times God has had to run after me and buy me back and clean up my mess and take my clothes that are just filthy and dirty and give me new clothes again. It's just countless times. So it's a reminder that as we've been given the mysteries of God, like the gospel, like, we are to steward it well. Like, what are you doing? What am I doing with the gospel that is stewarding this gift well? Very convicting thought for me personally. Yeah, and along those same lines later, sort of talking about something else, but he says, "What do you have that you did not receive?" And that thought hits me, you know, there is nothing I have that I did not receive. There is nothing that I did in and of my own efforts that got me here. Starting like with the most basic thing of life, like I did not make my life. I was given life. Um, and so just realizing that also connects to like being a servant of Christ and stewarding the mysteries of the gospel, like the gift of the gospel, because I was given it. I was given the privilege of knowing the gospel from a young age. Um, the privilege of serving Christ. So, some thoughts, convicting thoughts from me personally. I hope you have a good day. It's been Devos with Debbie. Bye.